Hey guys, welcome back to The Harvester, where I share stories, testimonies, and discussions from the field of world missions. And I'm your host, Tessa. This episode, I share a testimony of what James experienced. It's seriously an Acts Book 2 testimony. Okay, just a heads up. I did a recording of this in Zambia. It was the initial recording. And then we traveled back and I asked Austin to do some fact checking for me and to make sure I had all the facts and the details even down. And so he made a few notes. And so I actually had to re-record some portions of it. And guys, it's so obvious, but I hope you can still enjoy the story. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So James is one of our ministry partners. He is an awesome man of God. Came onto the team by Aston, another teammate, and has been moving and working in discipleship with Austin. There is another podcast where James himself is sharing his testimony of being baptized by the Holy Spirit and some crazy things happening after that. This episode actually plays off of that episode. So if you haven't listened to that one, go ahead and go listen. It's real interesting. But the short story is James's brother sold James's inheritance, his farming field, to a well-known witch doctor. Big ordeal, and James is like, this is my inheritance. I can't just let it go like that. I'm going to fight for it. And he ultimately, this is just massive spoiler alert. Go listen to that episode. It's really fun. But spoiler alert, James actually does get the field back, leads the witch doctor and his whole family to Christ. And it's just a powerful story of God's faithfulness and the boldness that James has in the Holy Spirit. So continuing on to the same field. Austin and I we're in the States having our daughter, and this happened during that time. And so when we came back, James and Austin were meeting up for discipleship. And James was just like telling him some things real casually. And he's like, I told you the story about when I burnt down the Zion church. And Austin was like, what? You burnt down a Zion church? And he's like, oh, I guess I haven't shared that story. Let me share that story with you. I got James's permission to share it with you guys. Now, a bit of backstory is the Zion church is a spiritualist church, not a spiritual church, a spiritualist church. It gets confusing because you think of Zion like, in the Bible, and like, there's other Zion churches that are, I think, decent. But the one associated here, specifically in Zambia, is more cult-like, and it practices witchcraft and seances and spirit guides. Overland has actually had a lot of interesting encounters with Zion churches, a lot of manifestations, some fights. It's been a whole ordeal. Anyways, so basically Zion Church is not a Christian church. The whole premise there is witchcraft and this gross synchronism into animism, witchcraft, and the church. That's the bit about Zion that you need to know. This was about a year ago. James's dad came to James and said, can you please loan to your uncle some of the land of your inheritance so that he can be farming and making a living for himself? And so James is like, yeah, sure, I can lend to him some land. He can be doing some farming. It'll be good for him. Yeah, sure. A little while later, James shows up kind of unannounced. In the process of looking at his land, he finds this Zion church has been built up on his land. And so typically, if you're going to build a church, the proper avenue to do this is you would go to the headman. The headman would go to the chief. Y'all all go together. You say, I want to build this church. The chief will approve it. And then there's actually this church road. I don't even know if you could call it a road, but it's this row of churches. In this chiefdom, all religious structures and church buildings would go into one row. The chief would allot it there. So it was really interesting when James found this Zion church on his land, and it wasn't even on the property that he gave to his uncle. I don't know who he talked to first, whether it was his uncle or the headman, but both of them said the same thing. It's like, well, it's already up, so don't worry about it, just leave it alone. I guess James pressed it with the headman, and he was like, first off, this is my inheritance. Second off, I am a minister of the gospel. I cannot have this on my land. And the headman was like, no, this is a legally sanctioned building. It is a church, and it's already here, so there's nothing you can do about it, so just leave it alone. And James is like, absolutely not. I'm going to go and grab some things, and when I come back, I'm burning down this church. I'm going to take the whole church down. And he's like, you better not do this. And he's like, yes, it's coming down. And so James leaves and to go to his family's house. He grabs like a crowbar, he grabs some fuel, he grabs lighters, everything he needs to like totally destroy this building. And when he shows up, the headman, the congregant of this church, along with James's uncle, had shared the news with some of the other congregants. 20 guys show up, and they are there at the church just waiting for James, and they're like circling the church. And these guys are like demonized, on the verge of like manifesting, and they all have like clubs and bats, and they're ready to like kill James. And let me just share, because I know a lot of us don't fit into this culture and don't know, but people will kill you over that. If you threaten something like that, they would kill James, and it wouldn't be like another thought out there. It's like, oh yeah, they killed him. And James went to say, this church is illegal. And the headman was like, it's not illegal. We have the proper permission.
James was also like, you don't understand. What you just started is a turf war between your God and my God. You got no permission from me to put this up. And Jesus says it has to come down. So it will come down.
The 20 men are there just throwing insults at James, threatening him, threatening his life. And James just, had some wisdom and was like, maybe now is not the right time. I think Sons of Sceva was mentioned at that time. But he's like, no, now's not the time to do it. And he told the guys, he's like, it might not happen now. It might not happen tomorrow. It might not happen next week. But I guarantee you, sometime you're going to come back here and the church will be gone. So James leaves, and everything kind of gets settled like that. And I think it was only 1 week later, James woke up very early in the morning. He doesn't stop at his family's house. He doesn't stop anywhere else in the village.
In this culture, greeting people is super important. You do not go anywhere without greeting your family or whatever. If you go into town and you're not even like swinging by your house, you would still, in this culture, swing by your house just to give a greeting to your family. So for James to go directly to the field instead of stopping by his family house, that shows he was on a mission and he wasn't going to let anything delay him or anything stop him.
He packs his bike with fuel, with a sledgehammer and some other things, and he just starts off in the morning, and he arrives at the church very early, and no one's around, and he immediately goes to work. He has almost totally broken down this building when other people start finding out what's happening. Now, everyone is coming there. The 20 guys are there again. The headman's there. The uncle's there. Everyone is just so upset, obviously, and yelling at James. And James is in the middle of like beating down the walls with this sledgehammer, and he's already knocked down quite a bit of things. And he just tells the whole crowd, he's like,
so he says to them, the one who is inside of me has rendered you powerless. So you're going to sit there and not do anything until I finish what I have come to do.
And amazingly, no one does anything. They're just like stopped and stared, and they're still like throwing insults at him. He knocked down all the building. He knocked down an altar inside the building. He crushed every brick, his quote, he crushed every brick until he was satisfied. And then he burnt it all down on top of that. And so when he was finally done, he turned to them, and that's when everyone starts approaching him. Also at this time, his dad gets word that a bunch of guys are about to kill James.
So James's dad and one of James's friends is standing between him and this crowd who's ready to kill him, and they are interceding on his behalf, trying to save his life.
And these guys are like, James is going to die. And so it was very serious. Like, everyone believed it. The headman came out. He's the senior headman. So within this village hierarchy, he is second to the chief for this village. Basically, this man represents the chief to this village. He steps up and he's like, this was a proper sanctioned church that you just broke down. So I'm going to take you to the chief, and you're going to face the punishment. And James just got this word of knowledge, and he knew that this was never brought to the chief. Instead, his uncle paid him 2 goats. He bribed him with 2 goats to move this along and to go ahead and put up a church here. And so James kind of shares that with him. He's like, this is not a proper building. This is not the proper avenue of how to do it.
He said, the Lord has revealed this to me. I have a word of the Lord that this structure has only gone up because of a bribe of 2 goats. Now, let's go see the chief. And at this point, some of the guys were like, oh, well, he knows. So, yes, it was 2 goats. It was a bribe. And the headman was like, are you kidding me? He did not know. You gave it away. And he was like, yes, he knows. If the Lord has told him, how can we hide it from him? The Lord has shown him. He's like, the Lord did not show him. He's like, yes, the Lord has shown me. So anyways, let's go to the chief. So being annoyed, the headman was like, I'm banishing you. I have the power to banish you. So I'm banishing you from this land.
James's dad said, we are the senior family here, meaning they are the ones who are in the position of electing that very headman who was banishing them. He's like, we are the senior family in this area, and we are the ones who empowered you to the position that you are in, and we've given you that authority. And yes, we will obey your authority, but I just want to remind you who gave it to you. And as of this moment, you are on our land, so we banish you from our land, and we tell you that you are trespassing and you have to go just now. That's how the headman just went off. What's left is just these 20 men who are manifesting, and they say, well, we're not the senior headman, we're not into the politics thing, so there's nothing stopping us from killing you, so we're going to do that right now. And they started to come at him. And James, just in the power of God, said, I forbid you in the name of Jesus to touch me until I have finished preaching the gospel to you. And so James just started preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And literally at the moment, everybody fled. James said, they were booking it. Like some were like hopping on bicycles, like 2 at a time, like booking it out. Some were just literally sprinting away. Only one man stayed. And he just sat there like frozen, and he stayed through the whole thing, and he got delivered and saved. So the one man who stayed through the whole thing got delivered and saved. Everyone else literally fled at the mention of Jesus' name and at the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that was just nuts in itself. And James was able to walk away. But it doesn't end there. Now we have a scorned senior headman. I'm just thinking about the things that are happening now. This story actually builds up to some testimonies that are happening and unfolding right now, which is why it's on my brain and I'm sharing it with you. This headman, he's so scorned, he takes it to the chief, and he just tells the chief, there is a troublemaker in the village who has burnt down a church. And the chief is like, well, bring that man. We need to face a judgment. We can't have this type of troublesome in the village. Not knowing that James has already sat before this chief with that witch doctor. So James arrives at the palace. He sits down before the chief. The chief instantly recognizes James, and he's like, James, are you the troublemaker? And James is like, yes, that's me. I'm the troublemaker. He's like, oh, James, is this on the same land that we had issues with? He's like, yes, it's the same land. And then at that moment, the chief turns to the senior headman and he says,
I never approved of this going up. It was never brought to me.
I don't know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing is wrong. I know this man to be a man of God, and I know the organization that he works with. My wife goes to the Queen's programs of the same organization. I know these people to be a great people of God. So if you find yourself opposing this one, then you are out of line. So I charge you this day that even the ashes should be removed from his land. That's how the trial ended. So simple, so quick. So for the next 3 days, this senior headman with supervision was shoveling off ashes from this land. I'm just sitting and I'm looking at how God has used James to glorify and exalt his name. I think of all these idols that have like fallen before the Lord, and this is one of them. And I love the beautiful move of God where he's like charging from the chief's mouth that even the ashes should be removed. And so that is super awesome. I will go ahead and share like what this is leading to. So we just happened to come to the palace to visit the queen, and if the chief was there, we'd say hi. So we visited the queen, and in the process, we preached the gospel. However, the chief was there, and he refused to leave the whole time. So he sat and he listened to the gospel, and it was just us girls. And so at that point, the chief kind of requested that the husbands come, and he had some questions and whatever. I think 2 weeks later, we came back with the men, and we had some really good discussions with the chiefs and some of his hang-ups and some of his fears. And he was asking, what can he do to be born again? And so I think there was a little bit of shyness at that time where it was like, hey, let's do this. And then we're asking in the translation, and it just kind of got lost as like, oh yeah, it's understood. I don't know, communication was just falling at that point. A little bit of shyness, it's fine, it works out. I think 2 weeks after that, there was a headman's conference that Aston set up, and the chief attended that conference, and he gave his life to Christ. And so did so many headmen in the area. There's lots of headmen. A senior headman just represents an entire village to the chief. And so there's lots of villages. And then in the village, there's a few other headmen. So the headmen's program had quite a few authoritative men, I guess, leaders of the community. And oh my gosh, so get this. This area is so thick with witchcraft that the principals and the teachers, which is a government worker, so they're actually assigned and are shipped out to a location, so they don't work wherever they choose. Anyway, so that's how these teachers find themselves in this work. All of them went on strike because of how much witchcraft had been taking place in the community and specifically in the schools. And so this area has just been like soaked in darkness. It's just been deep darkness, right? James faced that earlier. You can listen to that earlier podcast. After this men's meeting, so many headmen presented themselves to the chief, confessing that they've been involved in witchcraft and were repenting to God and to the chief about what they have been doing, and just so many lives changed. And I think that's amazing for them to actually come out to the chief and to say that. That's huge. Anyways, we had another headmen's meeting, and we arranged it. It was going to be at this time to this time, and all these people were going to talk, and it's the same location, okay? Austin is up there chatting, Jerry, one of our ministry partners, to translate, and out of nowhere, this like older man hands Jerry a note, and Jerry like reads it and gives it to Austin, and Austin reads it, and Austin just started. Like, they have 2 hours left in this program. And so Austin reads it, and the note says, "Time's gone, finish." He's like, okay. So he puts it in his pocket, and he proceeds to preach for like another 30 to 40 minutes, finish what he's saying, I guess. And later we were like, that's so weird, because we had made the program and all of that, and it was approved, and he just wasn't having it. Turns out it was the same senior headman who did this with James. We've been trying to meet with him, and he is running away from us. There was that time, then there was a time where he was around and we needed to meet with him. We wanted to meet with him, and he just wasn't available. And so now every time when Aston goes to meet with him, he is just like not found. And so he's really running from us. Anyways, we're going to get him. It's going to be fun. It's such a crazy story. And I really did condense it. I really wish James was here to share to you guys just how crazy the story is. Anyways, that was exciting. I get excited when I talk about these things because I just see the Lord moving, and I see what God did then and what he was doing in the process to even get to now, and what he's doing now, and knowing that he has better things even for the future. Thank you guys for listening. I guess that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the message. Be blessed and be a blessing.